This game was played in 1896, 1 year before Emanuel Lasker became the second officially recognized world chess champion. He maintained that title for a mind-boggling 27 years before losing a highly anticipated title match to the great Jose Raul Capablanca. Lasker, a brilliant mathematician and philosopher, was known as an incredibly psychological chess player, often leading the game away from an opponent's comfort zone even at the expense of the best move. This game is about resilience, flexibility, and adapting to a changing landscape. Lasker's initiative is steady. He never lets up the pressure, even as his attack changes character several times over. Okay, Lasker had the black pieces, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, the Ruy Lopez, knight f6, castles, and here knight takes e4, the open variation. White plays d4. Now, of course, e takes d4 opens up rook e1, pinning that knight to the king. Black plays bishop e7, queen e2, knight d6, attacking the bishop. Bishop takes c6, b takes c6. I'm not analyzing this very deeply because it's all theoretical stuff, opening variations. D takes e5, and Lasker played knight b7. So here you can see the dynamic established by the opening. Black has doubled pawns, a little bit of a cramped game. White has a good center, the pawn on e5 is strong. On the other hand, black has certain long-term things working for him, namely the two bishops. You see, this game could open up, and when it does, the two bishops will be very strong. So in this situation, white has good temporary structure, black has one long-term weakness here, and a good dynamic long-term reality in the two bishops. b3. Obviously planning to fianchetto the bishop with bishop b2. Lasker castled. Bishop b2. d5. Here, instead of allowing this pawn to remain on d5 and to allow for moves like c5, c6, an expansion of the central pawn structure, Jorge played e takes d6 en passant, a good move, also opening up the diagonal for his bishop on b2. C takes d6, knight b to d2. So now whenever you have a queen on an open file like this, a natural move in your development is a move like rook e8, putting the rook on the same file as the queen. That tends to be good for the weaker piece. In other words, if a rook and a queen are lined up, a rook is worth less. It's a good relationship for black. White played rook f to e1, also taking advantage of the fact that at the moment, this bishop is pinned now because it's only defended once and attacked twice. So if the bishop moves, queen takes e8, rook takes e8 would be checkmate. So that bishop on e7 can't move quite yet. Given that reality, what do? Bishop d7, defending the rook on e8 and preparing a discovered attack. So if it's black's move, he can move the bishop anywhere on the board, for example, f6, g5, h4, and open up the rook's attack on the queen. White played knight e4, a mistake. This move is based on the reality that he saw black can't really take advantage of bishop f6 here, because after bishop takes f6, even though I can take your queen, you can take my queen. So white felt comfortable within this dynamic of rook for queen, but you don't ever want to get too comfortable in that kind of situation. After knight e4, the alarm bells should tingle. You, with the black pieces, Lasker here, should have a sense something could be in the air. My rook is lined up with his queen, and I can play the move d5, kicking that knight out. Things are hovering here. So now the tactics are in the air. This is the final game of this course. I want you to find Lasker's moves. Imagine yourself sitting at the board playing a strong master. He just played knight e4. You know this dynamic, rook against queen, exists. What's your natural first move? Think about the center. Think about opening up that file. Think about potential tactics. you have all the ingredients you need. d5, very good. A good central advance, taking some space, kicking out that knight e4, and preparing a discovered attack with the bishop. White's forced to go back, knight e to d2. Now, once again, you're Lasker here. What do? You know you have this potential discovery. You also know if you don't use it, next move, the queen's going to move out of the way. White's not going to let it hover in the air forever. So you want to try to use that tactic, your advantage. What do? Okay, there are two possibilities that try to win material. One is bishop f6, aiming for that bishop on b2, and one is bishop to a3. Which do you prefer? Bishop a3, very good. This avoids the tactic of bishop f6, bishop takes f6, hitting the black queen, and now white has to do something. If he moves the queen, say to d3, then bishop takes b2, wins a piece. If he plays bishop takes a3, then black plays rook takes e2, rook takes e2, and he's won a queen for a bishop and rook. That's a good material advantage. Here white needs to find a way to save material, and he does. What do you think it is? Do you like the move queen a6 or bishop e5? The truth is that neither looks too appetizing. After queen a6, Lasker wins material by playing bishop takes b2, threatening the rook. So if queen takes b7, you take the rook and you've won the exchange. And after rook b1, what do you play? Well, here you can play the move rook takes e1 check, forcing white to deal with it. If he takes with the rook, then he has no more threats. You can just move your knight and you're up a piece. If he takes with the knight, you have two options. One is knight c5, attacking the queen and getting out of the way, followed by moving your bishop. And another is simply bishop to c3, moving your bishop out of the threat, threatening his knight on d2, and you're going to come out of this up a piece. So after bishop a3, queen a6 would not, in fact, save material. Black would win either an exchange or a piece. So the only move to try to hang on is to play the nauseating move bishop to e5. You hate to play this kind of move because, first of all, you're putting a piece directly into a pin, and black can attack that pinned piece very easily, which Lasker did, f6. But of course, in this position, there is a way for white to get out of losing material. You see what it is? It's the only try. Queen to a6. And now, with this move, white's avoided losing material, but he's given black a different kind of dynamic to play for. This is what happens all the time, and this is why I'm talking about the soft zone. You see, in this initial position, white made a little bit of a mistake. Black played d5, kicking the knight back, opening up all these discovered attacks. Black may think in that kind of position that he's got the game locked up, he's got it won. But no, strong opponents will always find resourceful ways to keep the game alive. But here, white figured out by bishop e5 and queen a6 how to maintain the material equality. Now, black to move. Roll with the punches, convert your advantage to something else. What should you play? Very good. What Lasker did here was very strong. He played the move f takes e5. His idea is, okay, fine, you're right, you're not going to lose material, but you've given me the chance to improve my pawn structure and begin a big kingside attack. So the tactic of d5 and bishop a3 forced bishop e5 and queen a6, opening up f takes e5. And after the move queen takes a3, white should definitely choose the bishop and not the knight, because the bishop is so strong. Here, black can play the move e4, and you see now black's the one with the strong central pawn structure and the f-file is wide open onto this f2 square. Black has a building attack. This is converting the advantage into whatever your opponent gives you. White played knight d4. Okay, your move once again. It's time to bring the queen into the attack. The knight on d4 is hanging. The f2 square is a target of ours. Put those ideas together. Black to move. Excellent. Queen f6. White needs to defend that knight somewhere. He played the move c3. Now, keep in mind the idea of the soft zone, rolling with it, allowing your plan to evolve with whatever your opponent gives you. The move c3 left a critical square behind, d3. In your mind, you see that right away. You think, okay, my knight's going to come to d3 at one point. Good. You've taken note. Your move. No, that's not the best move. Try again. No, that's not the best move. Try again. Excellent. Rook f8, aiming for the f2 square. White has to defend. He plays f3. Now, the alarm bells are tingling once again. The last two moves by White gave us some weaknesses to work with. We've got the dark squares now. e3 is open. This pawn has created a weakness in White's kingside. And d3 is open because of the move c3. We've taken note. Black to play. What do you do now? No, that's not the best move. Try again. No, that's not the best move. Try again. No, that's not the best move. Try again. Right. Queen g5. Excellent. The knight on d2 is hanging. White has to defend. Queen c1. Okay, no problem. He dealt with our threat, stopped our plan. Come up with the next move. What square did he weaken a few moves ago? d3. Do we look for forks in chess? Absolutely. Put those ideas together. Black to move. Excellent. Knight c5. Now you're playing strong chess. Your threat is to jump into d3. White goes back. Knight f1. So White's offering a queen trade. Should you do it or not? Think about the principles I've told you about so far. Hit yes or no. Should you trade queens? Exactly. Very good. You have to keep the queens on the board and build your initiative. He's offering a queen trade. Politely decline. Queen g6. Good. You have a threat. Now point to the square you want to jump into. Exactly. Knight d3 is a deadly fork, attacking queen and rook. Black has to defend, and he does. Rook e3. Now, we know the knight is going to be very strong on d3, so we should jump in there. Let's do it. Knight d3, queen d1. Okay, so we've been rolling with the punches, taking whatever our opponent gives us. Now, our knight's on d3. He's moved his queen and his rook out of the way. Now we're eyeing the king side. Look at that pawn on g2, that king on g1, that pawn on f3, our pawn on e4. There's all this tension in the air. In this kind of position, what I would do is zone right in on that g2 square. Can you make a move threatening mate in 1? Yes, you're right. That does threaten mate in 1. But here the problem is that after a move like knight g3, blocking the mate, actually we've opened up a threat on the bishop on h3. He'll have to move again. That's not the best move. Very good. The knight jumps to the f4 square. You see how a few moves ago the knight was on b7? It jumped to c5 to d3, and now it's on this fantastic attacking square, f4. Black to move. If it were your move now, what would you do? Exactly. Queen takes g2 is checkmate. Now you're really seeing things. White plays knight g3, blocking the mate. No problem. He stopped our plan again. We can roll with it. You have the black pieces, you're Lasker. Here, you want to continue the attack on the g2 square. He just blocked your attack with knight g3. Now you want to continue your attack. Build up the pressure. How can you kick that knight off of the g3 square? Well, we know the principle. The best way to remove a defender is to attack it with a piece which is of less value than it. In other words, a knight can be attacked by a pawn because a pawn is worth less than a knight. So there's no way to immediately attack that knight with a pawn. But what can you do to threaten to? Excellent. h5. Preparing the move h4, kicking that key knight out of the defense of the king's side. Here, white played knight d to e2. Another good, principled decision. White's in a lot of trouble, but he's trying to defend. His idea is to trade off this knight on f4. Should we do that? Yes or no? Exactly. You don't want to trade off. You're attacking. Now is a moment for a tactical move. So far, you've been playing very logically. Now it's time for a very specific move. Look at it. His pieces on g3 and e2 look very strong because they're connected. But there's one high-level dynamic I want you to be aware of. Very often, chess players, when they see two knights connected like this, they think that those knights are very strong because they're reinforcing one another. The fact is that often those knights can hurt one another because they're redundant. So, for example, if my knight were off the board, if I play the move h4, that knight on g3 is threatened. Normally, it would jump back to the e2 square, but here, the knight would have to go back to the f1 square, which is very passive, and it's not doing much. So, if the f1 square were somehow occupied by a queen on f1, instead of having the e2 square, it would have to go to the h1 square. So, very often you'll see in chess two knights like this, connected, defending one another. If your opponent has those knights, instead of thinking about them as a problem, figure out how to attack the most advanced knight. Here, h4 is our idea. So if you think about that in this position, if we were to play h4, then white could play a move like knight takes f4, attacking the queen, rook takes f4, and then knight e2, getting rid of the redundant knights, moving back with tempo, attacking this rook, and white's defending. Lasker played a knight sacrifice. The very strong move. Knight takes g2. So here you've sacrificed a knight, but not really. After king takes g2, you have the option of playing h4, going after that knight on g3. This is not a moment for materialism. Remember, the great attackers, when they sacrifice material, they're not in such a huge rush to win that material right back. They're at peace with the attack. In this situation, if you play h4, you might be giving white a move or two to gather himself, to defend. For example, what happens if he plays a move like f4, closing down that f-file, getting out of that pawn's attack on the f3 square. Now suddenly maybe white can try to lock things down. So h4 would be too materialistic a decision. Here, Lasker continued his attack, but now he made a very concrete decision. Think about it this way. This f3 square at this point is much weaker. Before, it was defended by a pawn. Now we've sacrificed our knight for that pawn. So if you take that pawn now, after rook takes, e takes f3, rook takes f3, only the king is remaining defending that rook. Now we know that when we're attacking, we want to bring the other guy's king towards us, lure it up the board our way. There might also be a way to distract that king from the defense of the f3 square. So if you look at this position, given those dynamics, would you play h4, winning a piece right away, or e takes f3? Excellent. E takes f3. Good move. He's in check. He has to take it. Rook takes f3. Now once again, you're Lasker. Black to move. Okay. The white king is defending the f3 rook. You have the black pieces. Remove the defender. That's the principle. What's the tactic? Look for a check, driving the king away from the defense of the f3 rook. That's it. Bishop h3 check. Excellent. Here, Poor has played king takes h3. If he played king f2, this bishop on h3 is going to be a real problem for white because it guards the g2 and f1 squares, which are the keys to escape for the white king. Now after rook takes f3, king takes f3, h4, this king is horrible over there. White is in huge trouble. He can't really move his knight anywhere because that knight is absolutely necessary for defense. For example, if the knight goes back to f1, here black can play queen e4 check. The king has to go back to f2. Then, can you bring in one more piece into the attack? Excellent. Rook to f8 check. The king has to go back. If he goes to g1, here you have mate in 1. Do you see it? Good. Queen g2 is checkmate. And if he goes to e1, now what do? Very good. Rook takes f1. You've taken a piece. The king goes to d2. Now you can take the queen. Black's completely winning. So you see after h4, white doesn't have the option of moving his knight because after queen e4 check, black wins by force. One thing he can try to do is run his king to the safety of the queen side. King e3. But that king is really roaming. It's like a lobster without a hole. Here, I think the best move for black is a subtle move. Bishop to g4. Once again, you see how those knights repeating themselves actually just constrict their movement. The knight on g3 can't move because of rook e8 check takes on e2. The knight on e2 can't move because it's pinned to the queen on d1. White has to move his queen, queen g1. Then after h takes g3, knight takes g3. What do you think black should play here? Let me give you a hint. Remember the principle. When you're attacking the king that's running around, what you want to do is drive it further and further up the board, away from his defenses. What white's dream is here is to somehow get his king d2, king c1, king b2, get it safe, wrap it up like that. Get the king safe somehow. Okay, we don't want that to happen. If we play a move like rook e8 check, actually we're helping it happen, and king can come back to d2. So do you see a move with the black queen that can enter into the white position and stop the king from moving into any safe zone? Black to play. You play this move, it's all over. The best move is queen c2. Excellent. And now look what happens to the king. d3, d2, e2, f2, they're all cut off. Next move is going to be rook e8 check, and the mating net is going to be completely unstoppable. In this kind of position here, you may be looking for checks, ways to force the king into a mate without giving him even a chance to breathe. But the truth of the matter is that against strong opponents, they'll look at all those alternatives. So very often what you need is a quiet move that cuts off the escape route. Queen c2 does just that. Okay, so after bishop h3 check, we've been looking at what happens after king f2. But Porges took the bait. He played king takes h3. Now, once again, you're Lasker. You've been playing beautifully. Keep it up. Stay with the game. Stay present. Black to play. Excellent. Queen g4 check. King g2. And now what do? Take the rook with check. Queen takes f3 check. Excellent. Now the king goes back. And now, this is the position that Lasker had been aiming for. You see these two knights are still on the board. They're defending one another, but they're also replicating one another. Now, at this exact moment, the position materialistically doesn't look that bad for white. His king is on g1. Okay, that's not just a terrifying square. He has two knights, for a rook and a pawn. About even. But it's not over. Here, Lasker has an incredibly powerful move using the weakness of those two knights repeating themselves. Black to play, what do? Excellent. h4. Here, white played knight h1, moving the knight to the corner of the board. If he had played knight f1, then after queen f2 check, king h1, you see how you can threaten an unstoppable mate? h3. Very good. So because of that, white played knight h1, guarding that f2 square. Here, your move. Black to play. How do you put it all together? Okay, in this position, there are a number of good solutions for black. The one that Lasker played is the best. Think about it this way. Visualize. We have this pawn on h4. So you know, if the white king comes up to the g2 square, let's say if you check somewhere with the queen, you can always make the move h3. So think about it this way. Can you check the white king so when he moves to g2, you're also defending the h3 square supporting your pawn? Go back though. Try to find what he actually played. Very good. Lasker went for mate. Queen e3 check. Now if white plays knight f2, then obviously you can take it. With the queen, with the rook, with whatever you want. Actually, rook takes f2. Looks the most appetizing. Here, discovered attacks are everywhere. White's going to get mated right away. In this position, white resigned. If he had played king g2, find your final move of this course. Black to move. Mate in 1. h3 checkmate. Wonderful job. A fantastic attack. Wasn't this a beautiful win? I love this game. The attack evolved with the defense. This is real chess. Move by move, adapt to the changing landscape. The player who has the soft zone, who is psychologically flexible and resilient, who's present to the subtle changes, that's the one who comes out on top.